All right, here we go. Exciting proof. All right, what the news media is not saying. Okay, there's discoveries happening all over Egypt, proving who the real Jews are, so-called Negroes, and proof in Saudi Arabia that the Bible is true and that we are the children of Israel. Okay, stunning proof of archaeological findings all throughout Arabia. Check this out, brothers and sisters. The Bible is a true book.
The theory of Moses and the Israelites being in Saudi Arabia is a relatively new theory to those of us in the outside world. It isn't new to the locals living there. We were frequently approached by Saudis eager to talk to Americans for the first time face to face. And one of the first things they would say with excitement was, "Did you know Moses was here? Let me show you where he and his people were." The tradition that the mountain in Egypt's Sinai Peninsula is Mount Sinai only dates back to the 4th century AD. New research based on Jewish, Christian, and Islamic sources indicate that there is a tradition that is 600 years older. And according to that tradition, Mount Sinai is in northwest Saudi Arabia. This other tradition points to Jebel Makla, a peak on the mountain range known as Jebel al-Lawz, as the true Mountain of Moses. Several historical sources, including Josephus, recorded that Mount Sinai is the highest mountain near a city that is today called Al-Bad. Locals refer to Jebel Makla as Jebel Musa, the Mountain of Moses.
So you call this one Jebel Musa?
Jebel Musa.
One of the distinguishing features of this mountain is the blackened top that you can see right behind me. The Bible says that God descended upon Mount Sinai as a fire. The blackened peaks stick out from the surrounding areas, and the rocks are only black from the outside. Researchers disagree as to whether the blackened rocks are actual evidence of God descending upon the mountain as a fire like the Bible says, or whether it's natural volcanic rock. A small handful of Americans tried to sneak into this area in the late 1970s and the 1980s. They were arrested, and their photos and videos were confiscated by the Saudi police.
So take note of it.
Land of Midian right now, near the town that locals describe as originally being the land of Jethro. When we visited this area, multiple Saudis approached us to tell us this is where Jethro and Moses resided. They excitedly pointed to an ancient well that is fenced off and marked as an archaeological site. The Saudis have long believed that this is the well where Moses met the daughters of Jethro, and Muslims from around the world come to see it. The book of Exodus says that the Red Sea crossing happened at a spot named Yam Suf, but experts have long disagreed about where it was. There are two proposed Red Sea crossing sites from Egypt into Saudi Arabia. The first candidate is at the Straits of Tyre, at the bottom of Egypt's Sinai Peninsula. The second candidate is at Egypt's Nuweiba Beach. Dr. Glenn Fritz, who has a PhD in environmental geography, conducted a massive study of the land and all the historical references about where the crossing happened. He found only one exact match: Egypt's Nuweiba Beach. Nuweiba Beach is almost 5 miles long and 3 miles wide, providing enough room for the Israelite population to fit. Here, they'd be trapped with the mountains on both sides, the Red Sea in front of them, and Pharaoh's army right behind them. Amazingly, there is a path under the water from Egypt into Saudi Arabia. The path is not too steep. The Israelites could have easily walked across if the waters were parted. Underwater research by Dr. Leonard Moeller showed strange shapes in the coral, leading some to believe that the remains of Pharaoh's army are there. According to this theory, The coral wrapped around the debris from Pharaoh's army and retained the shape of the objects after they dissolved. When they brought a metal detector down to the coral anomalies, the readings were consistent with...
So there you have it, Israel. You can look right here. See, this is the wheel of a chariot. You know, all the coral grown up around it. But they know good and well this was the Red Sea crossing. And all this evidence is down here. Why haven't the Saudi Arabian government allowed diving expeditions down here to really document and test this stuff down here? Because they know good and well what they're going to find. And that's why they didn't allow this gentleman to go dive on this day. But Yahweh still gets this information out to us some way, somehow. No matter how hard the powers that should not be try to keep this information secret and hidden.
Circular patterns of metal resembling the parts of chariots. We had planned to dive near the possible Red Sea crossing point because it's a public diving site with stores where you can go and rent diving equipment. But we weren't allowed to. The Saudi police showed up, and they stayed with us until we left. After the Red Sea crossing, Moses and the Israelites stop at a place near Mount Sinai named Elim. Desperate for water, they find a unique location with 12 wells and 70 palms. Along the path to the possible real Mount Sinai, there is a match for Elim with many palm trees and, to this day, 12 wells. Saudi locals pointed us to this location and specifically referred to it as Elim. Another thing around it, and they set up an altar in front of it. When Moses comes down from Mount Sinai, he destroys the golden calf and sprinkles its remains into the river that comes down from the mountain. Here, in front of the mountain, we have the remains of what may have been that golden calf worship site. Now behind me in this fenced-in archaeological site that the Saudis are protecting, you see both a stand with many petroglyphs of cows and people worshiping cows, as well as a structure that is slightly lifted that may be the altar in front of the golden calf stand. There's a sign in Arabic and English warning intruders against going into the area. The local tradition that this is where the golden calf was is so strong that if you approach it, you'll be suspected of searching for gold. According to the Bible, the worshippers of the golden calf say, "These are your gods, O Israel." This verse indicates that there are multiple depictions of bulls as the Israelites are worshiping the golden calf. On the top of the stand where the golden calf would have been placed, there is a circular indent where the rock has been worn down. It's speculated that this is where Moses grounded the golden calf into powder. After Moses destroys the golden calf, 3,000 of the golden calf worshippers are killed, so there must be a spot where thousands of people were buried. About 4 miles from this site, there's a massive ancient graveyard.
So take note of that, Israel. Our Father doesn't play.
Where the graves were dug all at once. It's located just outside the plain where the Israelites would have camped, so it's exactly where it should be if this is where that story took place. Here too, the Saudis have a sign identifying it as an archaeological site, and it's patrolled by police. That Moses built an altar of uncut stone at the foot of Mount Sinai and also set up 12 pillars to symbolize the 12 tribes of Israel. Right here at the foot of the mountain, we see this structure that resembles an ancient altar. what we are standing in right now is probably the animal chutes that would lead them to sacrifice at the foot of the mountain. The animal chutes lead to this area of the structure, which may have been the slaughter platform for animal sacrifices. The Saudis, of course, say that this has nothing to do with Moses, but they admit that they found animal waste and bones underneath this area when they dug. People who have been to this site decades ago say that this site used to be much cleaner, and you could more clearly see the remains of about 12.
See, archaeological evidence, brothers and sisters. Look at that. Without a doubt, all of this and much more around the world. And this year, they've been finding archaeological evidence in Egypt. So Saudi Arabia is not the only place. All proving the Bible to be true. And this archaeological evidence, which they're not going to tell you, points to the Negroes as the children of God.
In a natural amphitheater. The Bible says that a brook flowed down from Mount Sinai, providing water for the Israelites. The brook must have come down near the altar at the foot of the mountain for the sacrifices to take place. And the brook must have come near the golden calf because Moses threw its remains into the river. It's very easy to see where there was once a stream coming down from this mountain, where there's evidence of burnt sacrifices. It then ends up near the possible golden calf worship site. There's even evidence of wells around the area where a pool of water would have formed, proving that a large population once lived there. According to the Bible, Sinai must therefore have a cave that is accessible, safe, and suitable for sleeping. This cave above the altar is about 15 feet high, 20 feet long,
Elijah's
and 20
cave.
feet deep. If this is the real Mount Sinai, then this is almost certainly the cave of Elijah. That this split rock still remains today, testifying to the accuracy of this story? The answer is yes, and it is stunning.
Overwhelming evidence, brothers and sisters. In many documentaries that they're trying to erase online. They don't want you to know that you are the children of God. Hosea chapter 1.
This split rock was first discovered by Jim and Penny Caldwell, an American couple that was working in Saudi Arabia in the early 1990s. The local Bedouins have long had two names for this area, the Water of Moses and the Split Rock of Moses. This split rock is on top of a 100-foot hill and is somewhere between 40 and 60 feet high. The area near the split rock where the Israelites fought the Amalekites is named Rephidim, which means place of rest. Hebrew inscriptions we found there have been interpreted to say place of rest, the definition of Rephidim. Closer to the mountain, inscriptions have been found that Dr. Miles Jones, a scholar of ancient Hebrew, believes are talking about the battle with the Amalekites.
See?
He says one of the inscriptions,
The Amalekites are the ancestors of the Jewish people.
There are two inscriptions that Dr. Jones believes are marking where a Hebrew mother and daughter died.
Revelation 2:9 and Revelation 3:9. The synagogue of Satan, who say they are Jews and are not. The real Jews are the so-called Negroes.
Near the split rock and near the mountain, there are many inscriptions with an image of a foot and a sandal. Next to the image, there is Proto-Hebrew writing that means the sole of the foot. We also found inscriptions that were translated and found to refer to Yahweh, the Hebrew name for God.
It's actually Yahweh.
There's another area near the mountain named Wadi Musa, or the Valley of Moses.
That's right.
Here, a depiction of a
Psalm
menorah
68,
was found,
Yah.
and it might be the oldest
Our
depiction of a menorah
Elohim.
known today.
The Gentiles want to claim our God
Now, a new eyewitness
and hide the truth about who we are.
that the Saudis have been
But the
hiding
truth is
the
coming
evidence
out.
of the Exodus since at least World War II. This man was in a ancient path where the Red Sea crossing could have happened, matching the biblical account. You can see how the Israelites could have camped near Elim with its 12 wells and 70 palms. Along the way to Jabal Maka, there's a split rock and area suitable for camping. There's a mountain referred to as the Mountain of Moses, with a large plain in front of it where millions of Israelites could have camped. You can see an altar of uncut cut stone at the foot of the mountain, where there's evidence of burnt sacrifices, right where it should be. There's evidence of bull worship, and you can see exactly how Moses would have seen the golden calf worship going on as he came down from the mountain. There's a brook that comes down from the mountain just like the Exodus story says. You can see right where the cave of Elijah might have been. All of these little details have to fit, and they fit.